2 months in, what's been gained, what's been lost, and do you think they're making any progress? Will there be some kind of, resolution to this?
Hey guys, well, there's always going to be a resolution to anything. I'm not sure that it's anything more than a hot mess right now, albeit thankfully it's not a nuclear level hot mess. And I think that's ultimately a way of saying that that's what the president and his team are thinking about. Right at the heart of this is whether or not Iran should be permitted to develop a nuclear weapon. Now, there are two sides to this story, right? One is that we've done something pretty egregious. We've done something illegal. We've made this huge mistake that will echo through the ages because we attacked Iran without any warning and without any justification. I think if you take your view back a few years and think about the attack on Israel, and then another year back to 2022 when Russia attacked Ukraine, you can see the bigger picture, and you can see that there was always going to be some sort of clash between the US and Iran. So it wasn't done perfectly, I don't think, and it's still a mess, but it's still something that there is at least a convincing argument in favor of.
But Ed, there's still so much space between the objectives here of these two countries from the beginning, and the president actually just reiterating this now on social media, sending out a post that says, if Iran had a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be held hostage. I am doing something with Iran right now that other nations or presidents should have done long ago. Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, and that was from this morning.
This is just now.
Oh, okay.
This is a new one.
Yeah.
Oh,
forgive me.
Yeah, this is a new one. And yeah, this is specifically with regard to Germany. And again, though, he's repeating what he said throughout the day today. Ed is the point, and I think Carol's right on that. The question, though, is about where they meet, because if the U.S. says no, it's not okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and Iran says, well, we're going to push these negotiations aside, then how does the conflict end? It's sort of back to Carol's question.
Well, let's separate rhetoric and reality. The rhetoric, which is the talking, the two sides sitting around a cyber table via Pakistan. They're not together all the time in person. It's the two sides arguing about things that they've been arguing about for a very long time. But the reality is that the Iranian regime has been degraded. It's been shown that if it continues to mess around, the United States will use hard power. And so I entirely take your point that we don't really know where we're at with the nuclear question with Iran, but we do know that we're further away from the Iranians having a weapon. So I can't see for the life of me that because the Iranians haven't agreed not to have a nuclear weapon, that's any way a bad thing if we're degrading their physical ability to make war.
So does it make sense to you then that we open up the strait, move on, and work out the nuclear deal later? Or do you think if we do that, Iran's going to be like, yeah, okay, we'll get back to you on it?
So they're going to continue to try and get a nuclear weapon anyway.
Right.
There is no deal that they will agree to or honor. There is no deal that we will agree to or honor. It's all rhetoric. We go back and forth because we have to speak to our populations. We have to give our populations some reason for this ongoing struggle. But what we've done is we've got down to the brass tacks, to the reality of it. The Iranians have been funding a terror network for 50 years. They were behind Hamas, they were behind Hezbollah, and the United States has finally, thank God, decided to do something about it in reality, which is in the hard power domain. So whatever the Iranians say, whatever we say as the Americans, it's all nonsense. It's about whether or not the Iranians are going to get a nuclear weapon. And if they continue, I'm afraid to say we'll probably come back and hit them again.
Oh, go ahead, Carol.
No, well, go ahead.
Well, it seems like you can't do this. It seems like you can't do this, and a country can't do this with the way that Iran's leadership is right now. And the president has talked about the idea of regime change, but the Ayatollah's son is now in power. And some reporting has indicated that the IRGC, this is out of the New York Times over the weekend, the IRGC is more so in control of the country right now. And that's what's leading to this idea that there's not really a clear person or party to negotiate with right now. And it seems like there's still more work to do when it comes to so-called regime change.
Well, regime change would mean, I think I've seen estimates up to 500,000 troops on the ground in Iran, American troops. So when we say regime change, I think we should be careful because we're not actually going to go in control and occupy Iran. So you're right to say that it might be that people in the regime are now in a position of greater political power inside Iran, and that is a tragedy, and that shouldn't have happened. But again, I'll go back to what I was saying, which is that I'm not so much interested in regime change, and not even so much in behavior change, but in the ability of the Iranians to make war. So they've demonstrated that they can hold the international economy blackmail. They've shown that they're going to throw missiles wherever they want, whenever they want. All the more reason that we did what we did, and we degraded their ability to make war.
God, I just feel like everybody wants to make war, to be quite honest with you right now. I want to go to a couple things I want to throw at you, Ed. We've got King Charles of the UK. He is at the top of the hour, or a little bit after 3 p.m. Wall Street time, going to address Congress. He's here in the United States meeting with President Trump. You've got that on. And this at a moment where we've seen incredibly strained relationships between what has been a historically friendly relationship between the U.S. and UK. I don't need to tell you about that. You've got that going on. And then you've got, Iran, Russia, that China alliance, and China and Russia's assist to Iran in this war. I'm just trying to understand how this world is being molded going forward.
Well, 250 years ago, a mad English king started imposing random tariffs on Americans and introducing standing armies into their cities. And the Americans freaked out. And 250 years later, we have a mad American president imposing random tariffs on Americans and introducing standing armies in the form of ICE. And it's the English king that's freaking out. And that's a way of saying that history is pretty ironic. We've come full circle in the UK-US relationship. I'm a British American, and the British half of me is very much supplicant to the American half. But you're right to put that in context, which is that there is a power bloc emerging in Eurasia. China and Russia, and for that matter, Iran and North Korea are pretty much all on the same page, and they're trying to reshape the world. They're trying to tear down the post-war order. And I think that President Trump, for all his follies, was correct to see that and correct to do something about it, which was effectively to say to NATO, which means the Germans and the French and the English, please get on with rearming quickly. But the way that he's done that, of course, as I say, has freaked everybody out. So yeah, you're right to say that there's a context, and you're right to say that the US-UK relationship doesn't look that rosy, but there's a method in the madness.
Just in 30 seconds that we have left, Ed, what's the message then that the king sends to this joint session in just about a half hour?
Well, he's going to say all the usual things about how important the UK-US relationship is. The translation of that will be, please don't leave us in the lurch for 5 or 6 years before we've had time to rearm, because the Russians are on the march again. So that would be my interpretation of whatever his remarks are.